Welcome to the Spiritual Warrior Coach podcast, Beyond the Ordinary. I'm your host, Barbara Savin, healer, author, hypnotherapist, and spiritual life coach, and I am deeply grateful to share this sacred space with you today. Here, we journey into the sacred stillness within, the place where your intuition whispers, your soul awakens, and your spirit gently rises into its truth. This podcast is a sanctuary, a gentle circle of light, where you are invited to release the old energy your spirit no longer needs and reconnect with the truth of really who you are. Each week, I'll guide you through heartfelt teachings, soul wisdom, and spiritual practices that support you in awakening your inner light and walking your path with confidence, peace, and grace. So take a breath, feel your heart open, feel your energy settle. Feel your spirit expanding into its highest expression. You are safe here. You are seen here. You are loved. You are worthy. You are enough. And it's my honor to walk beside you as you rise into the beautiful soul you were always meant to be. So let's begin. Well, thank you for joining me today, and welcome to the Spiritual Warrior Coach podcast. I'm your host, Barbara Savin, here to help you reclaim your power, your energy, and your authentic self. And today, it is such a blessing to share this sacred space with my very special guest. And her light, her wisdom, and her heartfelt guidance are all gifts to us. So welcome, Maria, for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Barbara, so much. Thank you for having me. I said this conversation just felt divinely led, so I'm so excited to be here with you and your audience today.
Thank you so much. And let me share, and tell my listeners a little bit about your journey. Maria is a past life and subconscious healer and former occupational therapist with 8 years experience in clinical mind-body practice. She now guides soul-led CEOs to unlock their intuitive power, release subconscious blocks, and scale with soul through her signature higher self framework, combining Thea healing and Akashic records. I'm going to get tongue-tied today. You're the third podcast, so excuse me.
You're all good.
Maria is known for her blending science-backed nervous system regulation with spiritual calibration as she helps her clients activate deep feminine power and grow businesses that feel both profitable and purposeful. She's also the host of the Legacy Light Work podcast. So welcome after my tongue tie. I apologize. I mean, we could do it over, but then it shows I'm human. So it's okay.
I love it. Thank you, Barbara. And I was gonna say there's a lot of things that there's a lot of experiences and all these things. So I'm excited to dive into it. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you welcome? So let me ask you, can you share what, I know you were an occupational therapist for many years.
Yes.
What happened that you switched to this?
Yeah, I love sharing this story, Barbara, because it truly just talks about also how I think we as women sometimes can feel maybe boxed into one thing. And so for me, growing up, my parents really wanted stability and consistency for me and my brother, and so they really talked about finding like a solid, stable career. And so because my mom, she was a nurse growing up, and I watched her be in the same hospital for 35 years. My dad did road construction for 35, 40 plus years. So I saw them in very like stable, consistent careers. And they instilled that, if you find something good and hard work, everything will work out for you. And so I did the typical work hard, get good grades, got into a good school, and I chose a healthcare career because it really felt consistent, stable, and I wanted to help people. And what I found was after 12 plus years of schooling, getting my master's degree in occupational therapy, and then I landed my first job, and I was like, okay, well, maybe this doesn't feel like it, but maybe it's just because I'm getting started. When we all get that first new job, it's like, I just got to get this under my belt. And what I knew is like, I really love helping people, but like the medium that I was helping them with. So my first job was at a nursing home, and it was helping individuals get stronger and work on that rehab, getting back home. And while I really enjoyed like getting to know each of my clients, the work of what I was doing in my day to day, it wasn't lighting me up.
Mhm.
And then I got a job at working at Mayo Clinic. So I'm here in Minnesota, and Mayo is one of the number one hospitals in the world. So I thought, okay, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. I got my dream job then at the number one hospital. And I said, okay, this is it now. And after about a year at Mayo, working in what I thought was going to be my dream job, I didn't realize, but I started to feel like I had this hole or this void within myself. And I was like, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? And, in the hospital setting, again, I loved meeting so many different people, but in a hospital, it's really like people are in and out. We try to get them out in 5, 7 days. And here I am trying to like learn their life story and help them figure out how to find their purpose. And then I go to their room the next day and they're like, oh, they were sent home. And I was like,
Oh.
so I soon realized I thought to myself, am I meant to be in this healthcare career? Is this where I'm meant to be? Because I always liked going deep with people. And so it was around that time where I realized I was kind of in my own like anxiety, depression cycle. I think because I just was like, well, I did all the steps. Why is it not feeling like
Feeling right.
purposeful, satisfying work? And that's when I started doing kind of my own intuition, spiritual journey. And finally, in 2021, I got the courage that I just felt like every job that I was trying to like fit myself into, it felt like I was just trying to fit myself into another box. Another, like, okay, nope, do this or try this. So, how I really ended up in the work I'm doing today, it was my journey back to listening to my own intuition, really listening to that little whisper that said, you're not supposed to be in healthcare. And for years it just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, but this is the consistent stable career. And once I
Yes.
finally listened, I listened to the voice, I listened to this nudge, I took a leap of faith. I maintained part-time employment while starting a business, starting to help coach women, high achievers, helping them with managing anxiety. But it was when I allowed myself some space and freedom to really do what I wanted to do, is when I started to find myself and I started to realize, wow, there is so much growth outside of staying in the box that I was supposed to put myself in.
Mhm.
So that is my journey of how I finally, yeah, took the leap of faith to listen to my intuition. And then, I'm sure we'll get into just some of the other aspects, but ultimately landed me working in business, working for myself.
It takes a lot of courage to give up a full-time
Yes,
position.
it really does. It really does. And like, just speaking to anybody listening who, I think many of us, it's kind of rooted in us from a young age of like, oh, we get asked 20 times a day, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to
Yes.
be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And we put all this pressure on these 18-year-old teenagers still. They're still kids. And so then we put ourselves in boxes. Well, I'll be an IT manager. I'll be in healthcare. I'll be a nurse. And then it's really easy to like feel like I can't expand outside this box. So I get it. I've been there. And
Mhm.
sometimes this is the nudge that you cannot expand outside that box.
I think we've all been there. I worked for General Nutrition Centers for 15 years. I was the
Really?
regional sales director, supervising all the boroughs in Manhattan and like a few
Wow.
hundred employees. It was crazy. And
Wow.
then I started getting back into what I needed to get back into, which was the healing, because my grandma
Yes.
was a healer. And I ended
Oh,
up quitting my job as a regional sales director, and everyone thought that I had a nervous breakdown. But the first time in my life, I found me. I knew,
yeah.
you know what? I need to step away and get back into the healing modalities because that felt authentic. What I was doing, I loved my job, but it was extremely stressful. And that's what I was saying, it was in the box. There was
Yes.
nowhere else to go. So it was time to say goodbye. But it took courage and determination and saying, okay, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay with this. Even
Okay.
though I just stepped away from an incredible position. Um, I have to, I guess it's more like you need to trust yourself.
Yes. Yes. And it's like you said too, people will call you crazy at first, because it does look crazy on paper. It's like, why would you walk away from that? I'll never forget it, my exit interview when I left Mayo and I was leaving just shy of my 2-year anniversary there. And my manager jokingly said, she's like, "You'll be back." And I was like, I don't think I will be. I said, I realize what you're saying, and you think like, there's like grass greener and you'll come back. And I knew deep down in my heart, I knew everybody thought I was crazy for leaving that place, but I knew deep down, like I was following a nudge and that I had to go. But like you said, I think there is that judgment that comes from it too, of like, what is she doing? You
Yeah.
know?
Big time. I mean, even, even my husband said to me, and even my children said, "You sure you want to do this?" I said, I finally, this is something that I really want to do. And
Yes.
I had to push it aside and put also all that other talk from everybody, not just from my family, but from friends and neighbors. What are you doing?
Yes.
I had to just put it aside and say, Barbara, you need to be authentic. You need to be back to who you're meant to be.
Yes. Agreed. And I think more people are being called back to that.
Oh, without a doubt. That's why all of a sudden a lot of people like yourself are coming out and helping others get to where they need to go to.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
So, I mean, you have such a powerful blend of clinical mind body experience and also, and now you're doing spiritual modalities. How did you get into like the healing and the Akashic records? I'm curious.
Yeah. So this is kind of a fun story to share because I finally took the leap and I started my business in 2021. But I will say, even my business originally felt a little cookie cutter or a little bit safe because I was doing stress management coaching, wellness workshops. I was kind of playing on my skill set and experiences I had,
Mhm.
and I was just doing some local networking. And within 2 years, I brought my business into profit, and I was like, okay, this is it. And then I realized, why do I feel like I've caged myself in another box?
Yes. Mhm.
When I really looked at things, I noticed how with my one-on-one clients behind closed doors, the deeper work that we were doing, like, yes, they would come to me to manage their anxiety. They were often high achieving business women, leaders out in the community. But behind closed scenes, I realized once we got through managing the stress, we were doing work of helping them connect to their own inner wisdom. But I was too scared at the time to say I'm an intuition coach? And so it's interesting because I realized I built myself another box of what felt maybe normal to promote, like, oh, I'm a wellness coach, I'm a wellness consultant. At the same time, I'm also a mom to a 3-year old and a 4-year old and a 5-year old. So my son, he was in those younger ages a couple years back. And I realized I was being called as a mother. To be honest, my call to do deeper healing work was in my role as a mother. I realized how there were certain things that I hadn't faced from my own childhood, more of that emotional trauma that was coming up, raising a young child. So I started doing deeper past life healing and subconscious healing with of course, it's like I landed with my own mentors. I started doing this deeper healing work so I could be a better mother, so I could, really be present and not pass on the same things, to my son that maybe I had.
Mhm.
And that's when everything cracked open. And it was the biggest surprise, meaning I went into it just thinking I just need to do some healing. And through the deeper healing, I all of a sudden remembered. It's like I began to remember who I was on a soul level.
Mhm.
Like once I got through all the layers of the people pleasing and healing some of the abandonment wounds and healing this deep fear of like really owning my intuition, that all of a sudden it was like kind of things just started to click in place. I soon found a mentor who did Akashic Record certifications. And once I did that, I literally felt like I was back home. I was like, oh my gosh, I've been here before. I've done this before. This is my life's work. And ever since then, things just started clicking, and I really started owning the soul led healing business that I lead today.
Wow, that's some story. It's amazing how all of a sudden, I mean, we come here in this physical body, but we are spiritual beings.
Yes.
And then the soul, I mean, yeah, the lessons sometimes are really hard, and it keeps on coming at us until we finally take a step back and say, all right, why is this constantly happening to me? And it's all of letting go, peeling off those layers, healing,
Yes.
and then being true to who you really, really are. And I think
Yes.
that's what it is now. A lot of people are realizing that, they may not be someone working in a hospital or retail,
Yes.
selling vitamins and helping reset stores. But at the time it was fine. But then you realize, all right, there has to be more than what this is.
Yes, yes. And I think and I'm sure you can relate, Barbara, as a fellow healer, and you've probably witnessed so many people on their healing journey, that I think people, especially if you're in Western medicine, or over where people hear healing and maybe think of it as synonymous with like, oh, that means I'm broken, that means I need to heal to fix
Mhm.
something. But what people don't realize is when yes, usually there is a something that happens in our life where we're invited to do some healing. But what they don't realize is like when you do the healing work, that's also usually an invitation into a deeper spiritual awakening. And I think sometimes people think they can go into a spiritual awakening and avoid the shadow work, avoid the healing work. Like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to meditate. I'm just going to dance. I'm just going to tap into source, which I mean, all of those are beautiful things. But I think some people think, like, okay, but I don't want to look at the healing because that means I have to look at the bad stuff. That means I have to like admit that I'm broken. And I also just like want to rewrite that narrative that healing is actually you getting to remove all these layers, all of these old beliefs, and really just anchoring back into this remembering of soul. And it really is like, it's something that we get to do, you know?
And it's not easy. I mean,
Agreed.
it's a roller coaster ride. I know I had a lot of ups, and then all of a sudden, boy, I had those downs. But
Yes.
then it gave me the ability to reach inside of myself and say, all right, I need to be strong and courageous and get through this, because it's showing me something that I need to get rid of, that,
Yes.
I need to let go of. And I think that's what healing is all about, not staying in the old stuck energy.
I agree. I agree. And also, you're so right in that you can't put a bow on healing either. Like you said, it can feel really painful at times. It can be hard to do some of the belief shifts, and even just looking at things and being aware of some of what we've gone through can be really difficult. But I will say, when you begin to look at things from a soul perspective, from this spiritual perspective of, oh, wow, but that was a lesson I needed to go through in order to align to my soul mission, purpose, and path, it does help. That perspective shift does really help anchor you through it.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. It's funny because
Yeah.
I worked for Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Then I
Ah,
worked for Roosevelt St. Luke's Hospital in Manhattan. So I was always in that medical type of field. And even at
yes.
GNC, it was always in that area, but it wasn't what it needed to be. But I'm very grateful for all that has happened to me,
Yes.
good and bad. And it helped me to grow and to understand what my purpose is.
I agree. I agree. And I even think saying that too also gives permission. I think some people like wish, well, I wish I would have done healing sooner, or I wish I would have woke up sooner, or I wish you know what it's like, you were meant to go through that though, right? We were both meant to have those experiences. I'm grateful for the 8 years being in healthcare because it does help me blend kind of the science with the woo and having that background in the healthcare industry. So it's remembering, yeah, we were meant to have those experiences as well.
Oh yeah, it's in its own spiritual timing. When it's meant to be, it will happen, and it'll look at us, right in the face and say, here's your choice now. You can stay here or you can venture out. Yeah, it's change and it's unknown and it may be a little scary, but what is the benefit?
Yes, exactly.
So let me ask you, many people are curious about like past life healing, and I know so many of them actually do not understand how it actually affects their current reality. So
Yes.
past life experiences influence our present day, like our blocks, our patterns, our fears, especially for those, soul-led women actually pursuing their dreams.
Yes, yes. So when it comes to past life healing, it's interesting because I do these past life healing experiences in the Akashic records. And how I was taught and trained to utilize this modality and this, type of thing in my practice was, when we go back to a past life timeline, and I'm walking a woman through the process, which to anyone, it really just feels like you're in a meditation, you're kind of in a visualization and we can go back to a past life. But how we do it is really anchored in the healing and or the wisdom. Like, what are we meant to go back to that timeline to either heal and support so that the person is no longer stuck or fragmenting out there? And or sometimes we can actually visit a past life to retrieve some wisdom. Like, I've actually led women on uh, past life journeys where we really wanted to anchor into a time where she was stepping into her leadership. She was using her voice because she wants to bring that gift and skill set to the current timeline. So we can do some different things. But what I will say is, I think sometimes people can almost idolize or, make past life seem like, ooh, it's like this fantasy, woo, cool thing. But I really want to anchor it in saying, I really do so in such a sacred way of like, we go back with an intent. We go back to heal. We go back to retrieve wisdom. And so I also know that our ego mind can be really strong. And so whether you fully believe that you've had past lives and that you've lived many lives or not, whether you believe it or not, these past experiences can impact you in the current timeline. One example of that is what I was seeing for women who were really wanting to be more intuitive. They wanted to trust their intuition. But what they didn't realize is they had a past life experience where it wasn't safe to use their intuition. Something bad happened to them when they were using their intuitive gifts or they were a healer in a past life. And when we went back and healed that experience, we complete a process to help it so that she's not stuck there anymore, so that in the current timeline, she feels safe again to use her intuitive and psychic gifts. So I've had a lot of women go through my higher self mastery program and actually find that through the past life healing, as well as the subconscious healing that we do, these women actually feel safe again to use their intuitive gifts. And they didn't even realize it had to do with a past
Yes.
life experience.
Oh, I'm fully aware of that. And I think that's why I didn't step into my power at the very beginning, because I knew in a past life I was killed as a
Yes.
healer.
Yes.
And
Yes.
And so, being brought up in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, even the 70s, if you mention anything about healing or people thought you were number one, a witch. They thought you were
Yes.
satanic. They didn't want to be
Yes.
your friend. And so it was challenging. And then now in the 80s, I said to myself, I'm now safe to be who I'm meant to be. And I
Yes.
had to let that go and say, Barbara, no one's, whether they think it's woo woo or not, that's their way of thinking. That doesn't mean that it's how I feel. So it's
Yes.
important to, yeah, you have to let that past life go. Otherwise, it'll hold you down. It's like an anchor that, throws you into the
Yes.
ground and then you can't get back up. So it's
Yes.
so important.
Agreed. And
Mhm.
I really, it's like it can not make sense, and another way I'll try to help women explore this past life concept. It can also be like some people come into this lifetime and they have a really deep fear, like a fear of heights, a fear of the ocean, and they have no idea why
Why?
because they can't think of a this life experience. What's like, well, I've never had anything bad happen to me in a plane. I've never even been to the ocean, but I have this deep seated fear. Oftentimes it's because of something that happened to them in a past life.
Past life.
Maybe they drowned in the ocean. Maybe they were in an airplane crash. And so it's these things that maybe don't make sense. Or I've had clients who will be like, you know what? I've had dreams about this. And they didn't realize that it was actually memories of a past life experience. But when you just begin to realize that your soul has had many incarnations. And so some of the healing that we're called to do in this lifetime is to really heal some of those past life experiences.
So do you feel so you do hypnosis with them or uh
Yeah,
so you are you're a hypnotist then also?
yeah. So the two modalities that I use when we go into past lives, one is with the Akashic Records, and with the Akashic Records, we do get someone into that. So both modalities that I use get people into that theta brainwave state. So with the Akashic Records, once the individual is in that more deep meditative theta brainwave state, then with the Akashic Records, there's a way that we can journey within themselves to the past life. And then with the theta healing modality, that was actually a modality channeled by Viana Steibel. And with that one, it's more of an emphasis on subconscious belief patterns. And again, getting the individual into the theta brainwave state and doing some subconscious belief shifts. But with that modality, we witness the healing happening on the core level, which is this lifetime, the ancestral level, the past life level, and the soul level. So with both of those modalities, we're using that theta brainwave state to support the person in healing across all time and space.
And do you feel that they then accept what they're seeing in most
Yeah.
cases?
Yes. Yes. What I really like about both modalities and why I know my soul was called to kind of combine them and use them both is on the one hand, I like theta healing because they also use body testing. So we test beliefs before and after the session so that the woman can actually see, like, oh my gosh, before the session, I was testing, no, I'm not safe. And after the session, they're like, oh wow, yes, I am safe. And they begin to feel that in the body. So I really like that from that modality. And then with the Akashic Records, what I like is when someone's Akashic Records are open, it helps the person also tap into their own clairs. And so I can really walk them through a journey so that they're also receiving information through their clairs, which helps them integrate the healing afterwards.
So it's very empowering.
Yeah.
And it's I could just see somebody finally being who they're meant to be when they do something like that.
Yes. Yes. I love these two modalities. And with that said, I truly feel like, who's ever listening, and when you're called to go on your own healing journey, you'll find your people. Because like I'm always really mindful of like I mean, while I love these two modalities and they're my favorite, and I would say that they are hands down the best, I also want to know that I know friends who they've found amazing results working with a hypnotherapist, or they found amazing results working with someone who does more of this NLP timeline therapy. And so I'm always mindful, like you'll find your person once you set that intention that you're ready to heal. It truly is. I just believe that we have these soul contracts with people who, they're meant to support us on our journey. But with that, I also say always practice discernment, make sure you know who you're working with for
Yeah.
healing and
Mhm.
really trust your inner guidance on that.
Oh, that's a big thing is to trust that feeling, that gut feeling, because if it doesn't feel right, don't do it.
Yes, yes, 100%. Because you and I both know, Barbara, as much as we'd like to think, we know not everybody is always working in the light, and there may be some
Mhm.
of their own wounds or different shadows that might be impacting the work. And so you really do want to be mindful of who you're sharing your energy with on a healing journey.
Oh, without a doubt. Believe me, I'm that way too. It's and that's what sometimes my husband will tell me, you're not friendly, you're not friendly. It's not that I'm not friendly. It has to be right. I have to, I don't want someone that drains me and, it drives me insane because I
Yes,
need to protect me. Because if I
yes.
don't protect me, who's going to protect me?
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's what I've had women on the journey on their spiritual awakening and then the spiritual path, and they realize, you realize once you just become more aware and open to like the spiritual essence and just everybody's energy, you do have to get really discerning who you're allowing in your life, who's consuming your energy, who you have to have just some more protection around and things like that. And you just got to be really mindful of that.
Without a doubt. And that's another reason why I decided to get back into the podcast because I says, all right, there's so many people out there. I need to bring them in.
Yes.
It's, I, you know, it, I, it with that. that higher self of mine kept on like bashing me a little bit, saying, you need to do this again. There's so many people there. You have to, do this so that people can hear from other people. And that's why I came back to this. And it's
Yes.
so important because people need to know they're not alone on this, on
I
their journey.
I agree. And there is something about when more of us connect, and when we make these connections, when we amplify
Hmm.
people using their gifts to help other people wake up and use their gifts. Like it's this ripple effect. So yeah, I just love being a part of this.
Oh, yeah, I do too, believe me. So let me ask you, your higher self, your framework that you do sounds so empowering. Can you explain what it means to live and lead by your higher self and how doing it, can transform, not just business, but, every aspect of of actually your life, whether it's a female or a male?
Yes, yes. So the higher self framework and the higher self mastery program that that the framework lives in, ironically, but not ironically, I channeled it shortly after I went through my deeper spiritual awakening in 2023. And I had been wondering, I'd been, asking for divine guidance of like, what really am I supposed to do in my business? What is the program or what is the thing? And then I channeled this program and the framework. And so ultimately, to give the context for like why and how it came to be is that I found a lot of us who you would maybe be on a spiritual awakening journey, something would maybe happen, you'd start down the rabbit hole of finding out you'd want to learn more about what is intuition, what does angel numbers mean, like you kind of go down a rabbit hole sometimes I think when you start to awaken up.
Hmm.
And oftentimes we can do that, but it's almost from a mind based perspective of like, I just want to know things. I want to know, I want to know, I want to know. And what I found, and even this was for my own journey, is we're awake, we're somewhat intuitive, but when you think about it, the ego is still leading. That analytical mind is still leading, whether it's in business, life, parenthood. And I was like, that's like we're missing something of why is the higher self like we say we're awake, we say you have an intuition connection, but it doesn't feel like we're leading from it. It feels like intuition is the sideshow. And so that's when this program came to me of like, if we really want women and men, if you really want to anchor into leading from your higher self, you have to feel safe. You have to feel fully safe to use your intuitive and psychic gifts. And so the higher self framework was channeled, and it's a three-part process of one, healing your core wounds. So I start this program doing some deeper healings around making sure that within your mind, body, and your subconscious layers that you feel safe and you're rooted in your root chakra and that you feel loved and worthy. So I do this initial powerful healing just to help heal any of those core wounds so the person feels really anchored in their body. Then I do a deeper healing to support them with actually awakening and tapping into all of their clairs. Because what I found is a lot of us powerful, intuitive, psychic, gifted people, which many are, but we've actually like capped our own third eye. We've capped our own gifts and experience because of, again, these negative things that have happened in the past. Or because we had a parent who told us when we were little, oh, that's just don't those dreams, that's silly. No, you just got to work harder. So then we go into the second phase, which is healing these intuitive blocks. And then the third phase is really deeply anchoring and aligning into your soul purpose and your mission. So I walk women through a process of like just tapping in and anchoring to their soul mission and feeling more connected to that. And so through the three-step process, the higher self framework, I found that actually helped someone feel like, oh, I can now lead from soul. Intuition is not just my sideshow. It's not this cool little thing that I can do, but they begin to remember I am a soul having a human experience. And so I found I've walked 30 plus women through the framework of heal the core wounds, heal your intuitive blocks, and anchor back into your mission. And when that happens, you truly feel like you can actually lead from your higher self. And probably the most beautiful experience, but also the biggest learning thing for me as I was doing this program live the last 3 times for the last year is really helping women with their ego and the ego surrendering And so when I say that, like, I don't mean the ego has to die. I know sometimes we hear that, like, oh, your ego has to die.
Yeah.
But when we do that, it's like we're denying the ego. We're just making it feel like it's not a part of the whole. And so I really just found, and I was supporting women with, we really just need to have your ego in the passenger seat, and she can have her popcorn and she's
Hmm.
still a part of us because we're still human. But once she learns to surrender and allows the higher self in the driver's seat, as I call it, everything changes. You begin to trust, you begin to lead from your higher soul self. And so that is something that I really help women and men anchor back into.
So is that part of the shadow work to evolve and expand?
Yes, yes. So the shadow work that I'm leading them through is healing their subconscious beliefs and healing the past life timelines where they weren't safe to use their intuitive gifts. So when we go into some of that shadow work, I found it really helps a woman deeply anchor into her intuitive and psychic soul gifts.
Yeah, which is so important because I think the shadow work is important. And
Agreed.
and also that little inner child, of all the words that we were given, you're not good enough, you're stupid, you're
Yes,
this, you're that. So it's so important to allow ourselves to let all that go so that we
yes,
could be who we're supposed to be.
yes, yes. It is so important. And Barbara, like healing, it gets to be this gift that we are invited into. It's an ongoing process. I think that is something too that I support my clients in remembering is that as a soul who signed up to come back to earth, to have these experiences, to fulfill our mission, there will be seasons. We have seasons of healing, and then we have seasons of like more integration, and then we might go back into a season of healing, but to not see healing as, oh, that means I failed, or oh, that means I'm broken. Healing is really just an invitation to expand further, to awaken further to higher levels of consciousness. And we get to do that through the shadow work, through the healing. And so while I like to support women and just tapping back into their channel through my program, at the end of the day, it's also why my own business has had to evolve because I want to support women in continuing to do the ongoing spiritual work, knowing that it's a process. And so I love just continuing to support women in that shadow work, especially when you're a CEO or an entrepreneur, because oftentimes you're going to have blocks that come up. And so to have a space where you can go to just be held in your full soul essence is really important.
So let me then, how can either women or men balance their intuition with strategy to create, both profit and purpose, in
Yes,
their lives?
that is a great question. I often tell people while we want your higher self in the driver's seat, that's just kind of the analogy I go with, right? So if you're in a vehicle and of all of your parts, we've got our inner child part, our ego part, but then you have your higher self, your soul self. And so you want your soul self in the driver's seat. But you have to think of like, if we're going to make the car move, I think I want my higher self in the driver's seat because she has access to the best GPS system, right? She has connection to your higher self and guides. She can help really navigate and kind of set up the blueprint of where are we headed for the day. But then you think all the other aspects of the car of somebody still has to put the car into drive, somebody still has to hit the gas. So to me, that's combining the masculine parts of the self, which is we can't just expect, okay, I'm just going to meditate all day. I'm going to connect to my higher self. But at the end of the day, we're still a human in a 3D world. So somebody's got to take the next step.
Mhm.
Somebody has to still create the structure of, a sales page to invite people into your world. Somebody still has to create the structure of feeling safe to make an invitation to welcome people into your world. And so that's where it gets to be this beautiful dance and blend of higher self gets to be in the driver's seat navigating the highest and best possible route forward and just moving and flowing with the world, but you still need your humanness, you still need your drive, your ambition, because I tend to work with more of those type A ambitious women and they're like, well, Maria, it feels like I have to be one or the other. I
Yeah.
either have to be hustling hard or I'm intuitive. And I actually remind them, no, it gets to be both. You need all of the aspects to drive the car and get it to where it needs to go. And so we'll often find what are those systems and structures that they need in place to support them in actually taking the next aligned step. And I feel like that can also be another ongoing, it's a bit of a dance. I feel like each week I have to even sit down and ask myself, what are the priority tasks I'm getting done? And I tap into my soul self, what makes the most sense. But I still have to be the one to carry it through and follow it through. And so I think that's where it gets to be a blend.
So do you think that most of them listen to their higher self and then start to move into, a different aspect of their life?
Yes. I have seen some tremendous results with the women that I've been working with. Not only once they get that higher self on board, but they actually finally feel like freer and lighter to actually take the step that they wanted to take. Because what's interesting is for many women, and not to say that I know there are also people who may at times be in a more depressive or low energy state, maybe just depending on what they're moving through. But otherwise, for the women that I tend to work with, the working hard part isn't the hard part for them. You know what I mean? Like they're naturally driven to
To
like, well,
do
I
it.
know I'm here to do something. So what's nice is once they get that alignment with their higher self, it's like, oh my gosh, I realize now the car can move so much faster to where I want to go because instead of sitting in, it's almost like otherwise they're used to sitting in neutral and their analytical mind is like, oh, do I do this? Do I do that? And they're like in this holding pattern. Once their higher self takes the driver's seat, it's like, oh, now I know where I'm going. And they just put some action behind that. So, yeah, I've seen some really great results once women feel more anchored into their intuition and higher self.
So let me ask you, how do you personally realign when you're out of sync, or
Yeah,
purpose? Yeah.
yes, that's a great question. A couple of things. And these are the same spiritual practices that I tell my clients too. Because my natural tendency is more heightened and go, go, go. I really find that for me, I really have to have a daily grounding practice
Hmm.
because whether it's like I'm really tuned into my channel or I'm just maybe spending a lot of time that day, doing some of the behind the scenes and the systems work in my business, that it's very easy for me to feel disconnected from the body. So I have to have a really solid grounding practice. So for me, that might look like, signing up for one of my favorite classes at the gym. It might mean I need to take my dogs for a walk today and just get outside. It might mean I need to just throw on a song and just dance and get into my body. Like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to like look good, but I just need to get back into my body. So that's number one. And then I will say, I found in this day and age, and I don't know about you, Barbara, but I find so it's why I'm so deeply grateful that I have my own healing tools, so being certified in some tool I find is really helpful for myself because when I find that it's like I'm stuck in a block or I'm having a hard time get into action, that might mean that I might need to do some own investigating within myself. So
Hmm.
I might do a self theta healing session, just, getting myself into that state and just asking what is coming up. Now, with that said, I tell myself and clients there are some things that I can quickly find like the root to, and then I might do a belief shift on myself. And then I also know I have my own blind spots. So you have to have your bench, your network of people. And so when I can tell that there's just something I'm coming up against, a certain maybe trigger in life, family, business, I have no problem picking up the phone and calling, the person that I do healing work with and just saying, hey, this is a block that keeps coming up. I need to shift and move through this. So that's where I honestly personally continue to stay in that, being open and receptive to if something's inviting me into deeper healing, going into what that might be.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. So yeah, I'm always asking myself questions, and I need
Yeah.
to ground myself because if every morning when I'll wake up and I'll sit on my couch for maybe even just 5 minutes, grounding myself I also do my gratitude, prayers
Yes.
and thank you
Yes.
to everything, and that actually helps me stay anchored and focused in my body.
Agreed. Agreed. And I think it's just a really great reminder because yeah, you can be very intuitive. You can get more into healing and love and all of that, but like sometimes we can even almost go too up there. And I just mean like where you almost just feel disconnected from the body.
Mhm.
And I've had women where it's just like, oh, like Maria, I feel really light and airy. And I'm like, okay, that's because we got to like get grounded back into the body,
Mhm.
ground into our lower chakras, because it is easy to kind of float up, shall we say.
Well, we always have to know, have to have that good foundation because without that good
Absolutely.
foundation of grounding, we'll be all over the place.
Exactly. It's so important.
So let me ask you, I know you have a podcast called Legacy Light Work, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
wow, that's a beautiful name. What made you, get into that, and what is the spiritual content of that?
Yeah. So the funny thing is I have two podcasts, but I have
Oh,
one podcast that it's kind of like I'm putting it to rest for right now so I can focus on the Legacy Lightworker podcast. But I had a previous podcast called Awaken Your Higher Self. And to be honest, if one were to look at that podcast, it was really my journey. I mean, I used to share about stress management, resilience, confidence, all of the things there. And then I began putting more spiritual topics on there, and talking about my own spiritual awakening. But the reason why I really felt called to channel in and start this new channel called the Legacy Lightworker podcast is because I feel this movement coming through of more women who, you don't want to just talk about where intuition's my sideshow. You want to be higher self led.
hmm
And the name that came through was, you're a legacy light worker. You came here for a reason. And specifically on that podcast, I want to have conversations with other, strong, powerful, ambitious women, entrepreneurs, and CEOs, where I feel like for a long time, there has been a fear around having these conversations about spiritual awakening.
hmm
How do you use intuition in your business? Because I just find a lot of driven, ambitious women, you're so used to operating in that more masculine of like, well, I had to work really hard to get here, or I, had to work, I had to think harder and think smarter. And I love that. But I also wanted to blend that we can have this ambition and this drive with the woo, like it gets to be both. And so on the Legacy Lightworker podcast, I'll continue to highlight what it means to really bring through intuition and soul and lead from it in your business as part of your mission and purpose, as well as highlighting the stories of other women who are building and growing and scaling their business. And they also have had a spiritual awakening. They're also using their own spiritual practices and really kind of taking those conversations out of the closet, shall we say, and so that we can really own all sides of ourselves.
Well, that's why I think the Spiritual Warrior podcast, Coach podcast came about. I mean, I was going to call it Motivate Your Life, and I was sitting here and I heard them, tell me, no, no, that's not the name. And I said, but that's the name of my website. I don't understand. Motivate Your Life. I kept on hearing no. And so I sat and I said, okay, so what name do you want me to call it? And I heard the Spiritual Warrior Coach podcast, and I
I
started
love
to
it.
laugh. And I said, you have to be kidding me because I'm sure it's taken, you know. And then I heard, just look. And so I went on the computer, and lo and behold, it was not taken. And I said, how could it be not taken? It's so obvious. But when it's meant to be, it's and I could feel because I am a
Yes.
warrior. So,
Yes.
I don't give up. No matter how much I've been thrown to the ground, I just find myself, I just get back up. And
I love
and so
that.
I said, wow, the Spiritual Warrior Coach podcast. I was amazed that it was not taken. So
I love that.
right, it's amazing how it just comes to us, and we know why why we're doing it.
Yes. Yes. And that was a beautiful example, Barbara, of the legacy light worker, like the woman who she hears that intuitive nudge and instead of like being like, "Oh no, that doesn't make sense. My website says this, so I'm just going to call the podcast this because that would make the most sense." It's like, "No, you downloaded that, you received that, you knew that and you ran with it." So, I
Around
mean,
with it.
that's such a beautiful of like really being higher self and soul led.
that I even created a logo and everything. I was, all right, if you're going to do it, you got to do it all the way now.
Exactly,
Just go for it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Just
So
go
we
for it.
just, we find it's so important to listen to that voiceless voice that speaks, to us and with us. Sometimes, yeah, I mean, I've poo-pooed it in the past sometimes and I've suffered for it. But when I listen to it, I say, oh, all right, now I know.
Agreed.
Why am I so resistant, to
Yes.
that feeling?
Yes. Yes. And I think it's even really good for people to hear that, like, even those of us that maybe are more tapped into our intuitive gifts now, and also knowing so many more people, like you, we all can strengthen this intuition. But I think it's good to just remind people we all can have a doubt. We can question things because we're still human. And I think
Mhm.
it's just really good to say, like, of course I'm still human. Of course I can still have my doubt voice be like, what are you doing? That's okay. It's just more that I'm able to shift into a different perspective. I'm able to acknowledge, oh, I can hear the doubt over here. I see you. I acknowledge that. It may or may not be inviting me into something that needs some deeper healing, but either way, I know how to like shift back into, well, what is my soul truth? What am I meant to do next, even if it doesn't make sense?
Oh, believe me,
Yes.
I've been, trust me, I've been through a lot,
Yes.
a
Oh, I
lot,
believe
including actually ending up in the hospital because I didn't
that. Oh
listen.
my
So, but
God.
now I tell them all the time, okay, no more walking and text, because I had an incident where I kept on hearing Barbara stop walking and texting, and I didn't listen, and I
Oh,
took a really bad fall. So,
oh no.
yeah, and so I say,
You're like,
okay,
lesson heard, lesson heard.
lesson heard, and I say, I listen, please, no more incidents. I
Yes,
I will listen.
yes,
That's what
yes.
happens, though.
It is. It's so
Sometimes
true.
we listen the hard, it's the hard way, but as long as we understand and get it, it's all that matters.
Exactly. Exactly.
Where are you located? I forgot to ask you.
I'm in Minnesota.
Oh, that's right. That's what you said. Okay.
Yeah. And where are you again?
I'm in now California, originally from Brooklyn. The
Oh,
grandchildren brought us here 20 years ago.
oh my goodness.
And
Gorgeous
here's
out
where I
there.
needed to be to
Oh,
make all this real for me.
gosh, that's amazing. I would
So,
love yeah, we love we've been there a couple times. My heart would love to go out there, but my husband, he loves hunting and fishing and he wants to be around a little more of different nature scenes. So yeah, I mean like Minnesota's great, but yeah, we'll see where we
so
end up.
this was, I think, I tell you, I know we could talk for hours, but on that note, where can my listeners get a hold of you?
Yes. So a couple of spaces. I probably spend the most time on the social media platform of Instagram. And so you can find me on Instagram at maria.crystene. Christine is with a Y. Again, that's a whole nother story of how spirit just told me of like the name that I meant to go by, or it was like a tweak of my middle name basically, and what I'll author my books under. So I trusted. I'm like, this doesn't make sense, but we're going with it.
Oh, so you have
You can
books? You wrote books?
I
You've written?
will be. I will be.
Oh,
I
okay.
know they're coming down the pipeline.
Because I figured, oh, we have a few more minutes, we could talk about them.
Yeah, no, no, no. They're coming. They're coming. And then you can also search for the Legacy Lightworker podcast on Spotify or Apple. And then the legacylightworker.com is where you can find my work for soul-led CEOs and entrepreneurs. But if you also just find me and say hello, I also have, again, some of my programs, especially my intuition mastery program. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. That really is meant for just anybody who wants to deeply anchor into their intuition and wake up. That program is for anybody. And so you can always just send me a message if you're curious about that.
Are they online or in
Yeah,
person?
online. Currently, all my work is online, although I would love to host some kind of in-person event in the future as well.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
Yeah,
Sure
yeah.
you
And Barbara,
will.
thank you so much for having me on. This was such a beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Boy, you're a beautiful soul, let me tell you. Your
Thank
energy
you.
is really beautiful and pure.
Thank you very much.
I thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom, your love with all of us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also, well, I have to thank my beautiful listeners for opening your hearts and joining us on this journey. And just, remember you are powerful, you are loved, and your light matters more than you'll ever know. So until next time, keep shining, keep believing in yourself, and know that you are never alone on this path. So have a beautiful week filled with love and with light. Love, Barbara.